Hello everyone, my name is James Ryan, and I'm here to talk to you about something. I'm here to talk to you about science versus magic. Now, on the surface, science and magic appear to be two very different things. But once you get down to them and look at the nitty-gritty, they look kind of the same. Now, I want to talk about why I'm talking about this. Well, I'm a bit late to the party. I'll be honest. I'm talking about a topic that I've been wanting to talk about since last year, and last year was really when it was the most relevant. However, it has recently been sparked again. Basically, last year, when the Yogscast were doing their Tech It series, it wasn't just Lewis and Simon. It was a lot of different people. A lot of the Yogscast were doing their own series. In particular, Duncan was doing a more tutorial style playthrough, and in his playthrough he was primarily focusing on the technology based mods. Really, on the other hand, while he was doing a story playthrough, was focusing exclusively on one mod, Equivalent Exchange 3, which was no P mod, but for story purposes effectively made him a master magician. And throughout the series, especially the story-based times, it was constantly talked about how Rithian hated science. Now, Duncan didn't really like Rithian that much. Duncan originally represented the science geek who had nothing to do with magic, and eventually came to represent someone who used both science and magic, which Rithian considered an abomination. Now, but the thing about this is, two weren't so different, and even Duncan, using science and magic together, he thought that was really cool. He said they worked really well together even, and I thought that was pretty cool. But he still made a distinction between them, which I think in some ways is kind of not right. Let's talk about why I think this is. Well, what is science? Well, according to Google, science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural. Now, we'll keep with this definition for the moment, but notice that this definition isn't really what Duncan is using. Duncan is using something else. Duncan is not just doing science. What we are really comparing, perhaps you would think, might be technology. So we're getting a little vaguer here. We're introducing new terms into the mix to try to figure out exactly what we're talking on here. And technology is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry, and is machinery and equipment developed from such scientific knowledge. That might be a bit more on with what we're talking about with Duncan. So, is it science versus magic? Or perhaps it's technology versus magic? Now, I think, let's take a look at the definition of magic. Now, take a look at the definition of magic. The power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. Adjective, used in magic or working by magic, having or apparently having supernatural powers. A magic wand. But here's the thing. Rithian's magic is not really that mysterious. It follows clearly defined rules. He knows exactly how it works. He knows what to do with it. It's not some hocus pocus mumbo jumbo voodoo. It's something that he has studied, that he knows how to make effectively. He knows the internal workings. He knows what will and won't work. He knows how it does and doesn't work. In many ways, it's much more like science than it is magic. In particular, I'm going to take you to Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Arthur C. Clarke. As an example, check this guy out. This guy is wearing gloves filled with propane that allow him to make a flamethrower with his hands. But to someone who doesn't understand how all of this works, it could look perfectly well as if he's wearing magic stuff on him that allows him to shoot magic fireballs. In many ways, I think the difference between science and magic, and when I say magic, there are going to be we're going to have to split the definition of magic now. Because we've already taken science and we've turned it into another term. We're going to turn it into technology. But we're going to make these terms a bit smaller because these are not the main terms, are they? Well, they're not the beginning terms, at least. And magic, I want to split into two different terms. I want to split it into analyzed magic. We'll just leave it like that. And inexplicable magic. And the thing is, Rithian seems to be using analyzed magic, because I want to take you to sufficiently analyzed magic. It's a riff on Clarke's third law. It's any sufficiently analyzed, it says advanced here, but that's the wrong quote. Any sufficiently analyzed magic is indistinguishable from technology. Or science, depending on which way you want to put it. In any case, if you have something that, like wizards shooting fireballs and everyone's not really sure what's going on, but, he's a wizard, he can do what he wants, he's got superpowers and stuff, and then some guy comes on and says, how is he doing all that? And he goes off and explains it. He figures out how it all works, and he explains it. It might not be that he's secretly using flamethrowers, because magic may well exist, but not in the sense that people thought it did. It's not something unexplainable, it's something perfectly explainable. In other words, universes in which magic exists are basically universes in which the laws of physics are different. Well, not necessarily different, it's like the laws of physics are the same in most respects, except that there are things added on, forces and new forces and new types of particles that don't exist in our everyday world. And yet it seems somehow as if the characters in this world are somehow aware that some of these forces exist in the real world and some of them are new and alien and magical. It's a very odd thing. It's very odd. The inexplicable magic is kind of different because, let's take a look here. Okay, magic versus science. Once upon a time in real life, a distinction between the ideas of magic and science was not made, and both were very closely attributed to religion. As time progressed, especially in the Western world, the idea of magic, the will of a person influencing the universe, waned, while science, the facts and observable evidence in the universe influencing humankind's interpretation, became more prevalent. Alchemy, steeped as it was in astrology and the occult, evolved into chemistry. Scientific theory slowly became independent of the magical and the supernatural. This process was known as the Enlightenment, and it shaped science as we know it today. In other words, that old magic was someone manipulating the universe to their own will, whereas science, that old magic, whereas analyzed magic, or actual science in real life, is not so much about manipulating the universe, but understanding how the universe works on principle and using that to your advantage. In other words, what you're doing is not inherently changing the universe or making it change to you, but you are changing your methods to fit it and making yourself the better person for it. So, is Rithian really using inexplicable magic? No, he's using analyzed magic. But is it really magic? No, it's not, because it's part of his regular laws of his freaking universe. It's science. So why do they call it magic? Simple, because it doesn't exist in the real world. That's all it comes down to. I noticed some very interesting things in this, because it fits very well with what the Yogscast are doing. Look. The modern scientific community is highly skeptical towards claims of the paranormal and largely disbelieves in the existence of magic. Any effective practices such as the drinking of willow bark tea for headaches that were previously attributed to magic have since been scientifically explained. While for the scientist this is just a question of evidence, and science has no problem over time accepting counter-intuitive phenomena like radioactivity, quantum physics, hypnosis, and superconductivity, so long as the evidence for their existence is compelling. Some people interpret it to mean that science and magic are fundamentally opposed. It's not true. If you can prove that something exists, scientists will believe that it exists. Some authors will then transplant this opposition into a speculative fiction setting. For example, like in the Oxcasting, magic really does exist, but for whatever reason, it's not on speaking terms with science or technology. And like I said, what many anti-magic scientists and anti-science magicians seem to forget is that since most magic systems follow a set of rules, magic itself can be seen as a form of science. Nonetheless, one should not expect different types of magic systems to be reconcilable all the time, just probably because they're different stories and people have made up different alternate rules of magic and stuff. So yeah. But still, look at this. Contrast with magic this is sufficiently analysed magic, where magic has been sufficiently analysed. He said contrast with magic versus science, where this attitude belongs only to the scientists. For example, only scientists believe that magic is a form of science. Or flat earth atheists, where fans of science will loudly deny magic exists, rather than accept empirical evidence that it does. You know? So, I'm just saying, it's science, magic. What we're really talking about here is real technology versus fake technology. Because magic, A, doesn't exist in real life, and B, is unexplainable because it's unexplainable simply because it doesn't exist in real life. There's nothing to experiment on. However, if it did exist in real life, then it wouldn't be magic, would it? Because it would be explainable, and it would be able to be experimented on. Unless, of course, it wasn't explainable, and in which case it would likely be evidence for God or something, you know? Science, on the other hand, is just the explanation and stuff of this thing, and technology is just stuff that comes out of science. In fact, what Rithian is really doing is pretty much technology as well as science. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. My name is James Ryan, and I have been your host. Peace out.